Welcome to the Engineering, Emotions, and Energy podcast. I'm your host, Justin Wink. Today on the show, going to be talking about how to improve your relationships. How? By loving people like water. Now, what do I mean by loving people like water? You're going to have to listen to the rest of the show to find out. So, I just got back from Mexico less than a week ago, like five days ago. And so now I'm back here in Sausalito, where I've been for pretty much the month of January. And it was great going down to the Cabo San Lucas area of Mexico, where there's a lot of water. There's the ocean, there's pools, there's hot tubs. And I grew up around the water. So I love the water. So I grew up, going to the ocean, like boogie boarding. Actually, I did not get into surfing until I was much older. But when you spend time around water, especially the Pacific Ocean, which is very, very powerful, you got to be careful. You can't just dive in. And the things that I've learned about, my lifelong relationship with doing activities regarding the water, whether it's just swimming, whether it's paddleboarding, surfing, whatever it is that to love water, there are three very important things. So how do you love water? With awareness, with discernment, and without expectation. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt. And if you love people the same way you love water, you can really enjoy the beauty and the magic without getting hurt. So I'm going to go kind of into each and every one of these in a little bit more detail so that you can that's why I'm here sharing with you, is so that you can put into practice how to love the people around you. Because, like it or not, people are here to stay. I know sometimes we'd like people to just go away, and so that we could just do whatever we want to do without having to worry about others' people likes, dislikes, personalities. Yet, it seems like interacting with other humans is a part of the enjoyment of being alive on this planet Earth. There is the option. It's a choice. You can't always opt out and, go out into the mountains and interact with nobody. It's possible. I have zero interest in that. And I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you have zero interest in that too, because you're here listening to me. I'm talking to you. We're connecting. Even though maybe we're not face to face, we're having a connection. And really, it's how can we make these connections easier, smoother, more flowy? Like when we actually, get to enjoy some fun out on the water, because the Pacific Ocean, especially, because I grew up in Southern Orange County, and San Clemente Beach was one of my favorite beaches. And one of the things that I was taught early on is when you're close to the water, don't turn your back on the ocean, because you might think, oh, it's just, some light waves, no big deal. I want to see what's going on up on the beach, while I have my feet, being lapped at by the ocean waves. Yet, even though the sound might not change very much, the intensity and the power of a wave, could just be a storm surge, or it could be tsunami-like proportions, can sneak up on you. And so if you're not watching, if you're not aware, you're not going to be able to adapt. And this is very much like, dealing with people, being aware of their states of being. Is somebody, really super flustered? Are they frustrated? Are they angry? Are they tense? Are they coming out of work? Like, that might not be the best time to ask a certain question, or to, offer a hug or something like that. So it's being really aware of how somebody is in that moment, right? And then with discernment, because honestly, the awareness is the prerequisite to the discernment. So one of the beaches in Mexico was had some rocky tide pools. And when it's high tide, you don't even know that these tide pools are are even there. Um, and honestly, it's probably uh, not a good idea to try to wander into these parts of the tide pool. So knowing that they're there, there's usually some indications that there's some rocky tide pools around there. One is the rocks jutting up and the amount of splashes and surges that would be different than part of the beach where there aren't any rocks that can create tide pools. And so when you're aware that there's this area and that the conditions are not so well for you going into this area, you can go, okay, I might need to avoid this area right now. Maybe don't go in, and perhaps wait for another time. And this better time would likely be low tide, because maybe you've seen tide pools, maybe you haven't. But the reason they're called tide pools is because they change dramatically with the changing of the tides between low tide and high tide. So high tide, they're covered with water, and so various fish and other creatures, are there swimming. And then the tide goes out, and some fish and some creatures, they basically get stranded in these tide pools. And there's sea anemones and sea urchins, and so it's very interesting, this wildlife that's effectively captive in a small subsection of usually like a rocky pool. And sometimes these pools can be like quite large. In fact, one of them was large enough to be able to kind of have a nice little calm dip. So, around this rocky area, the sea is raging and, waves are splashing, but it's calm, peaceful in this part of the tide pool during low tide. And it's big enough to be able to, completely swim in and enjoy and have some beautiful, beautiful iridescent blue fish swimming around. And so by, having that awareness and that discernment, it's like, oh, this is a really good time to jump in and get wet. And this very much applies to dealing with people and reading the mood, reading the room, like what's appropriate behavior. For me, probably the best, some of the best examples that I can give for, this awareness leading to discernment of whether it's a good time to jump in or not is in, for the single men there looking for women, is there's certain things that when you're aware and you're discerning, when's a good time to maybe make an introduction, say hello, and other times when it's highly, highly likely that you're not just going to get a no, but you will get a hell no. What the fuck are you doing? Are you not paying attention? Type of response. And one of those types of situations is when two friends might be in very deep rapport. They're in a really involved conversation, highly emotionally charged. Maybe one's talking about challenge either in work or relationship, and if you're aware, you'll notice certain signs like their shoulders are facing each other. There is intense eye contact. There's little awareness about what's going on, because the awareness is upon each other. They're completely enraptured with the conversation that they are currently engaged in. And so it's a very strong bond. And it's, almost like this is going to be a horrible analogy. It's kind of like the bond of, some skin molecules. And if you go in there and try to get in between the two of them, it's effectively like you're cutting open, the skin, and they're going to feel attacked. They're going to be like, who's this asshole get in between us when we're in a deep conversation? And so it's likely that it's not going to be good. Whereas if you're paying attention and you maybe, like, oh, those two women look really, really busy with what they're doing. Let me go somewhere else. And then maybe you circle back later and the topic of conversation has changed and it's about, maybe just commenting on the weather or who's around. So they're really more open, looking around, not super engaged, and might be open to oh, hey, how's it going there? And this episode is not about how to introduce yourself to other people. Honestly, sometimes just hi is, just hi. That's a complete sentence, just like no is a complete sentence. So that you're much likely going to have a better response when you have that awareness. And so that's, with people you don't know, and then also with people that you do know, because very common situation, maybe with a significant other, this is probably something that might even be more challenging, in the time of remote work from home, things like that. But, the way this used to play out would be, somebody's, a long day at work, comes home totally frazzled, and then, the whoever's was home first goes, yeah, oh, so glad you're home, and I want this, and I want this, and the other thing, and I want to do that, and the other this, and the person that just got home is like, holy shit, can you just give me 5 fucking minutes? I just got in the door, and I just need a little time to decompress. So that's, using discernment, awareness is, hey, this person is not in a good state. They need to do something to get into a better state. And then the discernment is waiting either, the right amount of time or for the right change in mood, and then deciding to jump in. So we've gone over awareness, we've gone over discernment, and then the third part is without expectation. Because I've done a number of different 12-step programs. Al-Anon's the one that I probably spent the most time going to meetings like that and working that program. One of the big things there was an expectation is a premeditated resentment, which is basically like when you're gonna have an expectation of someone, that's chances are, especially if you didn't communicate it, they might not meet that expectation, and you're likely going to be disappointed, pissed off, angry, because likely you had that expectation because there's a very important human need. And when needs are not met, that often leads to some frustration and anger. And if the other person didn't even know about it, then how are they supposed to, meet your need when you didn't even explain it to them? So how this fits in with water and the ocean is you might have something you want to do in the water. You might have an expectation. So I'm currently in Sausalito. I've basically relocated to the Bay Area of California. Before that, I was in Folsom, California, which is outside of Sacramento area. And there's a lot of cool rivers and stuff. And where I lived was 10 minutes from this section of the American River coming out of the Folsom Lake. And Folsom Lake is dammed. It's a dammed lake. I don't know if it's goddamned lake, but it's a dammed lake. I wasn't familiar with how dams work and whatnot before I moved there, but the flow of water that gets released from the dams is not always consistent. There's a variety of things that factor that in that I don't even know. But one of the things that I would love to do is, get on my stand-up paddleboard, put it out on the water there, and paddle up as close to the dam as I could, because it gets really cool because the river narrows, so and it's kind of like big canyon walls, and especially in springtime there'd be these beautiful flowers of various colors, and you also get closer to Folsom Prison, which has this kind of like weird, ominous juxtaposition of this kind of old school, scary looking prison with that weird energy, and then this beauty of nature, the water and the flowers and the beautiful rock formations. And And so that would be one of my favorite things, is to go paddle up. The issue is that sometimes I could do it because the flow from the dam was not too heavy. And so I had the strength and the ability to paddle up to where I wanted to. Other times, for whatever reason, they're doing a very significant release of water flow. And I will try as I might. I paddle my hardest. I get to a point that wouldn't be where I was expecting to get to, but I couldn't get any further, and I'd have to turn around and go back. And so if I had this, really, really big expectation that I'm going to make it to this point, because there's actually a point where there's a sign that's there's a rope going overhead across the river, and there's a sign saying, do not go beyond this point. Like anyone who does, is subject to prosecution. Signed, the warden of Folsom Prison, something like that. Basically, do not go past this point. So that's usually the point I would want to get to. And when I couldn't make it, if I was really, really like dead set on like, man, it's a failure, I'm going to be disappointed. And whose fault is that? It's my fault. It's my fault. Like, that's no fault of the rivers, no fault of the dam operators doing what the dam operators do, but it's me having an expectation of how the water's going to be at any particular time. And, this can happen not just, in a river with the amount of flow. It could happen, at the ocean with the exact tides. And, some of this you might be saying like, Justin, there's ways you could look that shit up. You could know ahead of time and you could know and schedule, and you're totally correct, which is you're paying attention, because that goes with awareness and discernment. Yet we're not always going to be able to get 100% total information and then be able to be 100% skillful even with the information that we get. So there's going to be some things that are going to happen that we just can't anticipate and we can't perfect. And that's where having a lack of expectation comes in. Because if you just go, I would like this to happen, yet have no attachment to that actually happening, you can still go and have a good time. Because it's like, yeah, maybe I didn't make it all the way up to the river to the point where the warden's message telling me to, get the hell out of there. Yet it ends up being really fun, whatever point I turn around, because I've had a really good workout. And then I get to ride the really, really fast flow back down the river to wherever I put in. So if I'm without expectation, I'm just open to whatever the experience is, I can enjoy it. But if I have, something where I'm like, oh, it's got to be this way, then it's likely I'm going to be disappointed, could be angry, could be frustrated. And people are like that too. We often, might think, well, I expect this person, if I, say this thing, I do this action, I'm going to get this response. This especially important when it comes to, consent with, romantic stuff, but also even in the workplace. Sometimes we think like, hey, I do these 3 things over this course of time in this way, I'm going to get my raise, or I'll get the job, whatever it is. And so it's not to say don't want what you want, but let go of the expectation of how and when it's going to happen. And this is not to say not to have boundaries and just let people do whatever you want to you. This is like having boundaries with water. If the ocean is raging, with my awareness and my discernment, I don't go in, I don't jump in, I don't get wet. It's just like with people. If someone's storming and raging, you don't want to be around them. Sometimes you don't want to be around water. Sometimes there's certain people you don't want to be around. That's setting good, healthy boundaries. And that's another aspect of using your discernment. So if you really want to improve how you relate with people, wrapping it up, bring this back to the end, love people like you love water, with awareness, with discernment, and without expectation. So that's it for this episode of the Engineering Emotions and Energy Podcast. Hit me up on social media, Justin Wink, Ph.D., on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok. And also, if you want to send me a note, podcast@justinwink.com. So, send me a note. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite, wherever you're listening to this to. And then also every Tuesday at 12:05 p.m. Pacific time, I'm still doing the Tuesday 20, some free mindfulness meditation exercises. They only last 20 minutes, and the recordings are available on both YouTube and Facebook. So, it's always fun, to have people join live and, see your comments and all that. But even if you're not live, as long as you're relaxing, you're getting more energized, you're getting closer to your passion. That's really what matters. So happy to, be back, and I'm doing great. Some of you reached out after the last show about the dark night of the soul. Do appreciate that. So been doing much, much better. It's through the hard times that we recognize how great a lot of life can be. So with that, thank you and good day.